Hello, everyone. Here I am with GJ here from My City Landing. And, the mic is off. It's actually muted, GJ, on your side.
Mine's off.
You want mine on or off?
There we go. It's good now.
Okay, better.
Yeah, and I'll just do this. Perfect. So, yeah. Hope can you hear us okay? It's not showing yet? Well, it should be showing soon. Alrighty, we're gonna wait a little bit just to sync up with all the medias. And then we're gonna get started. So today we're doing a home buyer seminar, and the topic of today is really to explain to buyers out there how to thrive in today's market, especially being a seller's market. So we're gonna be talking about some strategies, some ways to be competitive, and also GJ is gonna be going truthfully over how you can better prepare to be a stronger buyer, right, GJ? So
Yeah, you and I like to have these types of discussions every few months because the market is constantly changing. We're not even in the summer market anymore. We're dead smack in the middle of the summer market. So there's a lot of people trying to move in between school being out and school starting. So we're going to give you some valuable information to help make your time invested in the home buying process is that much more beneficial.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly, you're right. So I think we have some people already following up. I think we might be good to go in most of the medias here. So we're going to get started. Just for informational purposes, we're going to have this information going down now. Here's for me and GJ in case you guys want to get in touch with us directly. But that's going to go away for a little bit because we're going to have the presentation up. So let's get started. So we are here today for the home buyer seminar, like I said, and we're going to be going over how to stand out as a buyer in today's market. A little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me, hopefully you do, but if you don't, I'm from Brazil originally. I've been here in the US for 14 years now. I do have a law background. I graduated in law from Brazil, but then came to the States, changed completely everything over, and I am a now broker owner of the office here in Harrisburg for NextHome Dream Seekers Realty, which is where we are right now. GJ is right across from the room for me. And so I've been doing this for a little over 6 years, almost 7 years now. And I do have a few specializations. I work with first-time home buyers. I have a seniors representation specialization. I have sellers representation specialization. I am specializing in negotiations, in pricing strategy for selling properties, and also work with veterans. And I am a prior veteran myself. So lots of information there get accumulated throughout the years. And I'm going to pass it over to GJ so he can talk a little bit about himself too.
Hello there. GJ Steinhauser, My City Lending. I have just hit 12 years of experience in residential home mortgages. I'm currently licensed in all 50 states and just recently celebrated my 1,000th transaction in helping people buy or refinance their homes. Thank you very much. So a lot of experience in residential lending, a lot of experience in solution-based lending because everybody's situation is different. I feel like in this market right now, there's a lot of complicated loans. So we're going to talk about in detail the more homework, the more education you can do up front, the more preparation. That's going to just ease your process. The hardest part of this process is getting your offer. Do all your homework up front. If you do all your homework up front, everything after getting your offer accepted should be smooth.
Very true. Very true. So yeah, we're definitely well accompanied today. You guys are going to learn a lot from GJ. So, okay, just to get started, since this is overall a home buyer seminar, we're a lot of different parts to begin with, explain the current market, because a lot of people come to me, especially, potential new buyers. Is this really a good time to buy? Should I be even considering buying right now? The interest rates are too high. So there's a lot of things going on in the media as a whole. And, newspapers just want headlines. So sometimes that can be very deceiving. So I want to try to clarify that as much as possible. So when it comes to interest rates being too high, we have to kind of backtrack and understand the market a little bit. So prior to COVID, the interest rates are sitting between like mid fours to even high fours, low fives, depends on the person, right? And that was very normal. That was a good interest rate back then. And then 2020 happened, March 18th, my birthday exactly, actually. The market crash, and then COVID happened, and we had the two, what we're calling the unicorn years. So 2020, 2021 were completely off the charts. There was a lot of things going on with the government. So the interest rates just completely dropped, and every single person wanted to buy a house. So one thing to keep in mind is that those 2%, 2.5%, 3%, whatever that was in 2021, they are unicorn rates. We're not foreseeing that happening again anytime soon. And JJ can probably confirm this, right? Those are really like one of a kind times. So don't wait to buy a home hoping that the interest rates are going to drop to threes again, because you're going to end up never buying a home. And then on that same note, let's say COVID never happened and we never had those two unicorn years. If inflation just naturally followed its natural course, and we were here today, we're probably going to be sitting on the 6 and close to 7 interest rate just naturally. Is the only difference is that people saw those 2.5, 3.5 back in those unicorn years, and then we had an adjustment made in 3-4 months, and then it went from 3 to 6. So people are like, wow, man, you got shocked with the difference. So that's what happened. But the interest rates are technically not high. They are on the higher end, don't get me wrong, but they're not necessarily out of the norm. It's just that what we saw back in unicorn years really threw people off. So just understand that. And then one thing to also keep in mind is that the longer you wait for the interest rate to supposedly drop, the prices continue to go up. So that brings me to the second bullet point there. The prices are not declining. We did notice a very substantial reduction on how much the prices were going up, because during the COVID years and even 2023, we still saw a pretty substantial increase in the amount of equity that people were gaining on their properties. But this year, we are kind of seeing a flat lining a little bit. We're looking at 1s or 2% instead of like 9% like we saw in 2022 and 2023. So people are thinking that because the properties are maybe sitting slightly longer on the market, or they're not seeing the huge increases or the huge price, people offering so much more over the price that is listed for, that we're not having a price increase, but we still are. It's just more, healthy. It's a lot healthier. So the longer you wait, the more expensive the houses get. So even if the interest rate stop by 1%, there may not be a good idea to wait, because the time to wait, the cost of waiting is almost the same as the cost of savings that you may or may not get if the interest rates drop, right? And JJ, do you want to kind of touch something on that?
Yeah, sure. Hop in here. The easiest way I can compare this for people is everybody's feeling the pain of these higher interest rates, and it's not just mortgage related. The cost of goods and services has all gone up. Now we're all more, unfortunately, I don't want to say we're comfortable, but we're able to deal with the higher price just of groceries and our electric bill and our utility bills and gasoline, things like that. And all those things are cyclical and tied together. Interest rates in the 6s and 7s are what we're seeing right now, depending upon a variety of factors. I feel like eventually they're going to settle when things stabilize a little bit more in the 5% range. And that would be good because that's kind of splitting the difference between the people who had 3% and the people who got in at 7 or 8%. If we can get into 5, I think that's going to be a sweet spot.
For sure.
Just not there yet, but we have some ways and some tips and tricks and strategies to help you get interest rates in the 5s, the low 6s or the 5s right now. And even if you're buying in the 6s or the 7s, we have ways to help you secure a lower rate when they do come around. So there's lots of different options right now, and that's why we're here to discuss these things.
That's right. That's right. And so let's talk as well on the third bullet point there, the shortage that we're seeing today. So because of this higher interest rates, a lot of the people, the homeowners that are sitting maybe on a 3.5% interest rate are not necessarily loving the idea of selling and buying a home at a 6.5%, right? So because of that, we are feeling and living right now a very small inventory market. So there's a very big shortage of inventory. When a healthy market usually has about 3 to 4 or even 6 months of inventory, we have been experienced for the last 3 years barely 1 or 2 months worth of inventory in the market. So definitely a big drop. And because of that, despite the interest rates supposedly being higher, we still have a lot of people that need to buy a home for multiple different reasons. So it's a lot of buyers, not enough homes. So in a way, we're still seeing multiple offers on properties. I would say it is getting better. Because we are definitely seeing a surge, a little increase on the inventory right now in comparison to last year, but it still is very slow, growth in there. So there's still competition for some areas or some types of homes, some price ranges. So it's kind of like, spotty in a way, but you're still having competition. The houses are still selling on average within about 10 days. And of course, that changes across the different areas within Central PA. But I would say overall, we can probably expect a property to show pending within 10 days unless it's overpriced or there's something wrong with the property. There's always a reason. So that's kind of like the reasons for causing the market the way we're seeing now, the high interest rates, the prices, the shortage, kind of in a lump sum, that kind of shows what the market looks like today. So this kind of like JJ can really explain to you guys what exactly is going to help you become a ready buyer, right? But you do need to have someone working with you to support you from beginning. Even if you're not ready to buy today, I would say today then should be the time for you to start creating your team to prepare you to become a strong buyer when the time is right. On average, I would say I want buyers to come to me within 6 months from buying, because then we can really better prepare them and get the better options, maybe see if they qualify for any grants or look up any special financing. If they need to work on their credit, JJ can help them with that. So getting started the earlier, the better it is. But on a lump sum here, just for you guys to understand, your support team should be, of course, your family and friends, your realtor, myself, hopefully, and then JJ is your lender. And then on the background, you're not going to see as much, but we're going to have the title company taking care of all the background searches, tax certifications, and preparing your deed for when you actually take ownership. So that's basically the support team there, just to give you an idea who is going to be involved in doing your home buying process. And do you want to touch base on the requirements?
Yeah, I'll jump in here really quick. Let's be honest. Going out and looking at the houses and making offers, that's the fun part of the process.
Yes.
And most buyers
You're welcome, guys.
most buyers want to jump into that right away. However, if you don't, nobody wants to work with the mortgage lender. It's a pain in the butt. I get it.
The paperwork
and documents, and we're basically looking at your credit score and your income and everything in great detail. But if you just go out and look at the house and you don't do the homework with the financing up front, you're going to lead to a stressful situation and heartbreak. And it's just going to make the process that much more painful. You might find your absolute dream house and then realize you can't qualify to place an offer on it. You're calling for highest and best in 48 hours. And if you would have done your homework in advance, you would have had this hiccup or hurdle, whatever it is in your situation, taken care of. And now you can come in with your strong offer. But because you wanted to have the fun part up front and go look at the houses before, and now let's figure out the financing later. Now you have stress and you have heartbreak. So take a little bit of time to do the homework up front. If we have any red tape or any hurdles or any challenges, we can figure out how to navigate those up front, because when you're looking at these houses, they're going to call for highest and best, and you need to be able to move quickly. And when you're moving quickly and you're unprepared, that's when people get burned out in the process, because that's when it becomes stressful. So do the homework up front. It makes the process that much more easier.
For sure. And I want to add two things to that. So sometimes I hear some buyers come to me and they want to look at houses, of course, like it's always a little backwards, right? They want to see the home and then they can work on the financing because they're like, oh, I know I can qualify, no problem. So one thing to understand, my concern is not that you are able or not to qualify. It's really what DJ just said, is being ready, because it could be that that house that I'm showing you today might have a deadline for today by end of day, or it could be tomorrow. And then DJ can be, he's amazing. He can get you an approval within hours, but that might be challenging depending what time we're looking at the property, right? Or depending on your specific situation, especially like, let's say you have your own business, then things change a little bit. There's so many different scenarios that we could be running into. And yes, it's not a matter of you being able to qualify or not, but the type of qualification you can get could take a couple more days to analyze and prepare you for it. So being ready is really key. The second thing that I'm going to bring it up in regards of being prepared is, if you look at a home, same scenario today, and you're not ready to go, and that home is perfect and you love it, and everything is just, that one is, you can get it out of your head, but then we're not ready, and then we can go put an offer because there's a deadline, end of day. Now you're going to have that property in your head moving forward, and it's going to make it, your experience looking for a home, very stressful and very difficult for me, because now your standard is that home. And it's sometimes like, if you fall in love with a property, it's tough to let go. So it's always best to be ready, regardless of, whether you think you can qualify or not. That's not what we're going for. Is really the being ready, because today's market is a tough market. It's for buyers. So you got to be ready. Okay, so this here is like a nutshell, basically, of the home buying process. I'm not going to spend too much time in here, but basically what we're saying, there is a difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. That's why I have both in here. Pre-qualification is basically when you just call an officer or do some sort of online little quick application, and you say, hey, I make this much, I have this, I have that, but nothing is verified. They maybe do a soft pull on your credit, nothing very serious, and then they give you like, hey, you pre-qualify for whatever amount. That is not what you need to actually purchase a home. What you need is an actual pre-approval. So that's what you do with DJ, right, DJ? So you have to submit documentation. They have to do verification of employment. They have to make sure that they're running a hard pull on your credit. Sometimes they may start with a soft pull just to see where you're at, but ultimately they need to have a hard pull on your credit in order to give you a pre-approval. Once we have that, then the fun part starts. We can go shopping with me, and then we can find that beautiful home. And then I'm going to be helping with the paperwork for offers and negotiation. Once we're under contract, we have the home inspection. We're going to do your paperwork for the purchase. GJ is going to start on finalizing your loan application on the back end. Then he's going to be ordering your home appraisal to make sure the house is worth what you're trying to buy for. Then we have the final loan approval after a lot of other things. I'm just really summarizing here. There is insurance that we have to get. We always have to get a homeowner's insurance quote to go with your file. That's mandatory for lending purposes. And then once everything is cleared, inspections went good, appraisal is good, the financing application is great, then you get your final disclosure to purchase the property, which we call it the CTC, clear to close. And then we can do the settlement, you get your keys and move in. So that's it on a nutshell. There's a lot that goes on in the background, but I'm not going to bore you with all the stuff that we have to go through. You just have to focus on getting ready and taking it.
Yeah, this is one of the spots where we want to jump in with a strategy that can help you thrive in getting your offer accepted in the beginning of the process here. So when Nini is writing your contract, let's just say it's a 30-day contract, one of the contractual dated obligations is going to be called the loan commitment. And the loan commitment is usually due somewhere in the middle of the contract period. It's usually about 2 weeks before closing on a 30-day close. And what that does is that information goes to the seller that says, hey, the underwriter has fully reviewed their file, and the bank is making a commitment to lend based on probably a few other minor conditions, like the title work coming back, and appraisal coming back, insurance updates, things like that. We do that process up front. Okay,
And that's
that can make your offer get accepted, because I can do something called a CCA. It's a certified credit approval, where I send your complete file to our underwriter in advance of you even placing the offer. Okay, so when you're making your offer and the seller is reviewing your offer, really what the seller and the listing agent are looking at, if we accept this offer, is it going to close? Because they don't want to have to relist the property. They just want to know if they accept the offer, is it going to close? Is it going to close on time?
Yep.
If you're already providing them with an additional piece of the sales contract that might not be due for a few weeks in advance, just at the front of making your offer, that is coming in strong.
Yes.
That could be the difference between your offer standing out and your offer getting accepted. So that is the very first strategy that we're talking about to help our buyers thrive in this market, is do a full certified credit approval with an underwriter review, and come in with not just a pre-approval letter, with a loan commitment.
Correct. And that's why timing is of the essence on this one. That's why we say don't just start looking at property, because this process to get what he's talking about, you have to be, doing this, a few days in advance, right, DJ, in order to be able to get to this point. So you don't want to be shopping before you get this, because you need this in order to be a very strong buyer, without even doing anything else. Like, let's say your offer is exact the same as another buyer, but you have the CCA, you're already 3 steps ahead, because you're telling that seller, look, I'm actually already pretty much loan approved, minus the appraisal and the inspection or whatever we have in place for your offer. But as far as you and your finances go, we're done. So that's basically what he's telling us.
Yeah, and if the seller wants a quicker turn time, if you already have the CCA done, you might not need a 30-day window. You might be able to close in 21 days, no problem. And that could be another benefit to help your offer get accepted as well.
Yeah, very true. So yeah, we kind of covered this already, the getting pre-approval. Do you want to go over anything else in particular here?
No, this is a lot of what we talked about. Is the more homework and the more verification we can do up front, it's going to help your offer stand out. Everybody's going to have pretty much a pre-approval letter, and when the seller is looking, at your pre-approval letter, number one, are you working with a local lender? Are you working with an out-of-state lender or an online bank? Those types of lenders, sometimes, in my air quotes here, have a reputation for not communicating well or not being able to close on time. So that could make your offer get tossed. So working with a local lender and having as much of an approval as possible is going to help your offer stand out.
That's right. So, I think this is still you, if you want to go over the actual application process.
Yeah, so filling out the loan application, we offer our buyers a couple of different ways to do the process, because everybody is more or less comfortable in doing it a certain way. You can come into my office, I can go to your home, or we can meet at a neutral third-party location and do it face-to-face. We can do it over the phone. We can do it on Zoom. What a lot of people do is use our co-branded mortgage app. And our realtors really love it because it just increases the communication piece. The buyers can do the application at their own time, because sometimes if it's a husband and wife situation, they both might not be available at the same time to do the application. They can do it on their own free time. And then we will get a notification when their application has been sent in, when they've uploaded documents, and the realtor sees that information as well. So we're all communicating on the same page.
Yeah, and this new system that DJ has is pretty impressive. Actually, I'm going to speak here on the realtor side in case there's realtors watching this too. It makes it very streamlined. We are part of the process, which is nice. We have a lot of clarity. It helps on communication without really having to communicate in a way. And even with the the cost sheets, I mean, it's very, very clean, very clear. It makes it easy for me as well to explain things to a buyer, because it's available online and it has like always options. So it's very, very interesting on the realtor perspective to work with GJ with this new system, because it just makes it communication that much clearer. Just wanted to point that out. So, okay, so this is kind of like, JJ's going to cover this one too. It's basically going over the different types of loans. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah, so this is some of the common questions that we get about different types of financing. And the financing varies depending upon a couple of different things. Number one, your credit score is going to be the first thing that ties you into a certain type of program, because most of these programs have minimum credit score requirements. Geographic locations, your employment background, if you're a veteran, or if you're buying a house that is a very expensive one, it's going to be like a high balance or a jumbo type product. But you may hear people talking about conventional loans and how they're more preferred in this marketplace over FHA. Unfortunately, that is true. And the difference is a conventional loan is going to offer more favorable financing when it comes to the interest rate, mortgage insurance, things like that, on average, if you have a credit score over 700. If your credit score is below 700, you may still qualify for a conventional loan, but your terms may be less advantageous. The biggest reason that sellers don't want a conventional, or do want a conventional loan compared to an FHA loan, is the appraisal. An FHA requires some additional things to be looked at on an appraisal process, where they're looking at minor things like we were just talking about, peeling paint, cracks in the sidewalk, handrails, GFIs. And in a seller's market like this, the seller has the leverage to say, I don't want to have to fix those things before I sell my house. So if you have a conventional loan, some of those minor things that the seller feels like you're being nickel and dimed with, there may not have to be dealt with before closing. So that's the biggest benefit to a conventional loan, and making it more advantageous to a seller getting it accepted. USDA loans are geographic restrictions and offer also income level restrictions, and the more urban areas outside the city and things like that are going to open up USDA, which offers a 0% down payment, where conventional and FHA are 3 and 3.5%. VA loans for our veterans, I wish they were more readily being accepted. I do not feel like our veterans should be excluded from being homeowners just because it's a VA loan. But unfortunately, some of these VA loans do also look at some of those appraisal issues similar to an FHA.
Yeah.
And the jumbo loans are specific loans for high balances based on the county loan limit. So those are going to be things up over 800,000, things like that.
Correct. Yeah. And for when it comes to offering, and for buyers out there that unfortunately cannot afford to go conventional, for example, or they do want to take advantage of their VA benefit, which honestly, I don't blame you. I'm a VA veteran myself, and I use my VA, and I would be very upset if I was rejected just based on the terms, that the fact that I have a VA loan. But the guidelines for like certain basic safety criteria for the property have to be met during the appraisal process for VA or FHA or USDA, and they tend to be more strict because those loans are government backed or government guaranteed, that we call it, different than the conventional ones that is not, and that's why they have a more lenient kind of terms for FHA, for appraisal requirements. But there is a way to go around this, and we are going to be talking about that too. And maybe GJ can even clarify this even further. I think we would probably want to do a specific training just for that one alone. But what I'm talking about is the renovation loan version. And we do have a renovation version for VA loans and for FHA and for conventional. So there are availability for renovation loans for all three. When I say renovation, just to clarify for those of you that don't understand how it works, basically you're buying a home, and then you do get a certain amount based on how much the house could potentially be worth after renovations. And the bank will give you that secondary loan amount for the renovation portion under the renovation loan terms. So GJ, you can take over on this one and kind of clarify even further.
Yeah, we're giving away the good stuff here. So the topic of this entire class is how to thrive in today's market. And if you're an FHA buyer, or basically any loan that's a non-conventional loan, how to thrive in this market is the 10-day rule.
Mm-hmm.
I know Nini talked about that earlier, that the average days on market is 10 days right now. And from the seller side, it's still a seller's market. It's getting a little bit more in balance. It's not as bad as it was last year, but the sellers definitely have the advantage for the opening weekend when these houses are on the market. So if you're an FHA, USDA, or VA borrower, the first weekend on the market is not going to be your sweet spot for getting your offer accepted. They're really going to want those conventional loans because it's just a little bit easier. But the second weekend that it's on the market, that's going to be the time where you can come in as an FHA, USDA, or VA borrower and be like, hey, your house was not accepted. I know I have an FHA loan. I'm coming in full price, and make your offer, because that's when the leverage position from the seller is switching to the buyer when you hit that 10-day spot.
Exactly.
And if the house didn't sell the first weekend, there's a variety of different reasons, and one of them may be that it has something minimally wrong with it. And I mean minimally, like we can fix it, like the peeling paint,
Very common
roof, a kitchen, it needs flooring,
rails.
updating. Yeah, all those things can be done with FHA in a variety of different ways. So the first weekend on the market is going to be better for conventional loans. Coming up on after 10 days is going to really open up options for our other buyers like FHA, USDA, and VA.
Yeah. And one thing to also touch base on the renovation loan portion. Whenever, I think we're doing a little bit of echo, I don't know why, but hopefully people can listen us, hear to us. So one challenge that we have been having as well in this market is the appraisal value. Basically, the buyers are offering maybe slightly over what the property was listed for, and then we're seeing some valuation issues, where let's say the property got on the contract at 350, but the house is worth 340. The renovation loan doesn't necessarily have to be just towards renovation per se. Sometimes it could be just something minimalistic, could be a whole remodel, but it could also be used as a ways to counter the valuation problems, because FHA 203Ks can go up to 110% of that value, the value of the property, whatever the valuation was. So if the property appraised at 340, don't make me do math, I don't know, but you would have 10% over that. So, and I think that's a pretty substantial amount. So we're talking like $30-some thousand over. So if there's only a $10,000, difference on the appraisal gap, right, from what the house appraised and what you offered. So an easy way to fix that would be to use the 203K, just flip it 203K and take advantage of the 110 valuation amount.
Yeah, so say you have an FHA buyer that's pre-approved and they're looking at this house and it's coming up for the second weekend on the market. And as soon as you walk in, you go see the kitchen, and it's got those really old, ugly, like cabinets and like Formica or some type of tile, really outdated kitchen. And that's probably the reason why the house wasn't under contract already, because it needs like a $25,000 or $30,000 kitchen. So don't automatically give up on that house. If you love everything else about the house except for the ugly kitchen, we'll do a renovation loan and we'll get you a brand new kitchen. We'll have contractors come in and give you estimates, and you can pick out the cabinets, you can pick out the colors, and get all those things exactly the way you want. So that's a way for FHA to thrive with the renovation loan program.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's the biggest thing I get sometimes. Like, there is already a shortage in inventory, so there's not that many houses out there. And then maybe a house is seating because it's just dated, but everything is perfect, but it's just the ugly duck, right? It just needs a little bit of love. And then that's the way to thrive as a buyer, by taking advantage of this type of creative financing. So the renovation loan is a great option, because you can take that home and turn it into whatever you want to it could be just simple as, like you said, a bathroom remodel, a kitchen remodel. But also keep in mind that if you find like a fire damaged property, like literally there's nothing left on that, but you like the location and the house is selling for 25,000, and it could be worth like, I don't know, 300,000 after it's fully done, you can still use a renovation loan to completely build a new home as soon as it fits within the budget that that property ARV, the after repair value, is worth. So you can get as creative, as crazy, or as little as possible, or just use towards an appraisal gap with the renovation loan alone. That's why this topic could be a whole freaking episode on its own.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. You should have been a loan officer. That was good stuff. Yeah, so FHA, like she said, it's tough out there to find the perfect house. And if you're a borrower who, for whatever reason, is not in a conventional loan, if you just have Nini set up the searches for you for days on market, 10 days and over, and start looking at those properties, that's when you're going to find your winner.
And we did get a question here, if you are able to combine FHA with PHFA. But I guess we need to explain first PHFA so people out there can understand what that is. And then the answer is yes, just whoever asked. But JJ is going to explain about PHFA for you guys, which it is a grant option available here in PA.
Yeah, so she's right. The answer is yes. The PHFA does have a renovation loan program. It's really good stuff. PHFA has, I'll give you the brief overview because PHFA could be a whole nother course as well. Stands for Pennsylvania Housing Association. So the entire state of Pennsylvania, it's not just certain counties or certain areas that are able to use that program. Depending upon the program that you do, you could be getting some down payment assistance in the form of a repayable second mortgage with a small monthly payment, or you could be getting a forgivable second mortgage where if you live in the house for 10 years, you don't have to make any payments on it. So those programs are great. Sometimes I'm doing it's like a seesaw here. So if you need that down payment assistance, you might be getting a less favorable interest rate. The more money that you get, it's a slightly higher rate. So it's a trade-off. But if you're doing the PHFA loan with 5% down payment assistance on a $300,000 loan, that's $15,000. And that could be used to pay the majority of your closing cost, or could be paid to put towards an appraisal gap. So there's a lot of different options up there with PHFA for down payment assistance, appraisal gap, securing a lower rate. There's some programs with PHFA that have a really low rate and not as much down payment assistance. But there's always a drawback. And right now it's larger turn times because a lot of people are taking advantage of the PHFA programs at this current moment. So you might have to write a contract. Actually, no, you will. Right now, you will have to write a contract with a 60-day closing. So it's a trade-off, not being able to close quickly, but you get the money from PHFA. So there are definitely options there for PHFA for home buyers in this market right now. A lot of very, very popular program.
And that's correct. So one thing that I can mention in regards of PHFA before I can start even talking about the making an offer, but I've had clients that used PHFA as a way to increase their buying power, meaning they were using the grant that they were getting from the PHFA benefit to offer extra perks to the seller and spice it up their offer a little without having to pay that out of pocket. So it's not only for buyers, let's say, that don't have the money, and that, of course, that's what designed for, right? If you don't have enough funds, the PHFA is going to be a great way to completely eliminate your down payment plus a little bit of your closing costs. But you can also be creative and use PHFA if you do have the funds to purchase, to use it towards, offering additional items to the seller. And that's what I'm going to go over now. Just things that you can do to really stand out as a buyer when you're making an offer. So let's say you already work with DJ, you're a very strong buyer, you did everything you could do to get to the table to make the offer. Now let's talk about offer items and how to make your offer stand out the most. There are many things we can do and offer. Of course, you could do one or the other, or you can do a combination, or you can do all of them. You don't have to do all of them, but I'm going to go over everything that I have seen being used. There's so many other things too, but these are like the most common ones. So everybody talks about offering above asking, and that is great. That's like a must. Basically, everybody's going to do that. But the biggest thing to understand and keep in mind, whenever you are approved to purchase a home, you're doing a financing contingency because you have to qualify to finance in order to buy, and the bank is never going to give you more money than the house is worth. So keeping that in mind, if your house is listed for 300 and let's say you offer 330, it doesn't matter if you offer 400. If that house that appraises at 300, that's the only guarantee the seller has, right? So yes, offering high is great in the hopes that the house appraises for higher. But on the seller side, there's no guarantee that he's going to get whatever you're offering. That's when we're talking about the appraisal gap. So I'm going to break it down and explain what that means, because a lot of people get that confused. So if the property is listed for 300, you offer, let's go round numbers, 350, and then we do the appraisal, and then the appraisal comes back at 330. So now we have an appraisal gap between your offer of 350 and the appraisal amount of 330. So that's $20,000 appraisal gap. You as a buyer, when you're doing the offer, you can actually offer to the seller something or the entirety of an appraisal gap. So you can say, hey, seller, in case the property does not appraise at the max amount that I'm offering you of 350 in this case, you can say, I'm willing to pay up to X amount, let's say $10,000 towards appraisal gap. I always recommend putting a cap on your appraisal gap, because then you can kind of know how much you can expect for your closing costs, especially if you're tight on it. You don't want to go like, oh yeah, I covered the whole appraisal gap, and then if the house appraises at 300, you have to pay 50K, right? So we don't want to put yourself in that situation. So I always try to put a cap, but that's something you can offer to spice it up your offer and make your offer stand out. So the appraisal gap is a one way that you can make your offer more appealing to the seller. And you can use your PHFA grant, for example, or any other grant that you may get to kind of give you more buying power by offering that kind of thing, because that will be coming out of pocket. That will be a cash, on the table that you're going to have to provide. The other thing that you can do, which is very, very common, I feel like almost every single offer right nowadays has to offer this if you're competing, is the transfer tax. So in Pennsylvania, more specifically in Central PA, transfer tax for both sides, for seller and for buyer, both pay 1% of the value of the home. So in the same scenario, if you offer 350, that means your transfer tax as a buyer is 3,500, and the seller is the same. So you can say, hey, seller, I am willing to pay your side of the transfer tax. So that meaning that 1% from the seller side, you offering to pay on their behalf. So now you're giving the seller an additional $3,500 in this case. So it's always 1% of the purchase price, and you are able to offer that as a way to make your offer more appealing. So that's the second thing there. Inspections. I want to really kind of talk about this because this one is a tricky one. Unfortunately, in this market, the sellers just want an easy sale. Like, they don't want to have to worry about anything. They want to like, okay, I got your offer, I'm closing for sure. No questions, no issues. And what a lot of buyers are doing is like, okay, so I'm going to make it as easy as possible to the seller so they can choose my offer. I'm going to waive inspection contingency. And that is okay if you feel like confident that the property is in great condition, but it's always a scary thing because we don't know what's behind the walls. We don't know if the water is working fine. We don't know if there's a crack on the foundation that we understand, right? Because nobody's engineer here unless you are, then it's okay. But that is always a scary thing to do, but that is happening very often. There's ways to go around that if you don't feel comfortable waiving inspection. We can always just put an amount cap, or say like, hey, I'm not going to ask for anything that costs less than X amount, or something like that. Or you can say like, I'm only worried about structural damage, so we can reword it that way. You can still keep your contingency, because one thing to keep in mind is contingencies protect you as the buyer. So if you have a contingency in place, that means you have a way out without losing your deposit. And that's kind of important. When people waive a contingency altogether, that means they are completely like saying, hey, I don't care if you find anything, my money is yours if I decide to back out, which is always scarce. So keeping that contingency, even if you modify it for the inspection, could be a wise way to not completely waive your inspection contingency, but still make a strong offer. So having a cap or specific items that you're worried about. And yes, JJ, go for it.
Yeah. Before we move on to the inspection, I mean, you've seen my emails and you know I have the top 10 strategies for getting your offer accepted. So the inspection goes both ways. The sellers don't want to get nickel and dime for all these little things on inspection, and the buyers don't want to get hit with a sledgehammer over large expensive items. So I have this verbiage that I recommend them to consider when they're making their offer. Inspection contingencies may only be considered by a buyer for reported items, total repair replacement, $2,000 or greater, or whatever dollar amount you're comfortable with. Otherwise, the report is for informational purposes and may not be used to terminate the contract. So that gives the seller peace of mind that I'm not going to get nickel and dime for every little thing, like a missing outlet cover or a pull in the carpet, little stupid things like that. When the buyer feels comfortable that they're not going to get hit with a sledgehammer over a large item, like, hey, this HVAC has seen better days and needs like a full replacement. So both of you are protected. So something to consider when you're structuring your offer, and all these little details help you thrive in this market. That's for sure.
Most definitely. And the one thing too, sometimes keep in mind or even have as a consideration, when we are limiting the inspection, or if the client chooses to completely waiving the inspection, one thing to really consider doing is getting a home warranty. That's a great way to kind of counterbalance that risk of buying a home that may have little things that could potentially arise. And honestly, even when you do a full-blown inspection and do all the repairs at that time, you never know. You may move into the property and 1 month later, everything breaks. So a home warranty is very, very cheap considering what he offers. It's usually valid for 1 year. You can get it up to 2 years, and you can even get more home warranties in the future. They are limited on what they cover, but they usually cover a lot more than just your homeowner's insurance, which is a different thing. It's a required item by lending. You have to have a homeowner's insurance. But on top of that, a home warranty cover the items that, like, no questions asked kind of deal. So they will cover the items that are not usually covered by a homeowner's insurance. So it's a great way to kind of have that little peace of mind whenever you move into the home, when you're doing those waiving inspections, or even if you don't waive inspections, it's still pretty good to have it. We're talking a $500 value on average out there. There's many different companies you can shop from. And your realtor, I know I have a company that I usually recommend. So if you're working with someone else, you can probably ask them. They will have someone to indicate. But it's a great way to kind of counter this. Some other things to think about. So when you are a buyer, you are also you have your realtor representing you when you're purchasing a home. 99% of the time, that realtor's commission is being paid for by the seller. And that's a lot of things. That's the one thing that a lot of buyers don't even know sometimes. But they are representing.
We're about to open Pandora's box here.
I know. I'm going to be very careful what I'm saying.
No, but this is new stuff that is really happening in the market right now. So go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, this is kind of important. And even like if someone is reading the headlines about the whole lawsuit thing that's happening, I'm just going to explain it to you exactly what's going on. So it's always been where the buyer has the buyer's agent, the seller has the seller's agent. They are representing their parties, and you are entitled to pay for your buyer's agent if you're a buyer. But it's been very common, and I'm not going to call it standard because there's no such a thing as a standard thing. It's just common to have the seller pay for both sides, because when they bought it, they didn't, but then when they sell it, they do. It's kind of like always being this way. But then the lawsuit was about some sellers, maybe because of the way it was worded to them, feeling like they were obligated to pay for the buyer's agent representation when they were just, working with the seller's agent. And that's how this kind of all came out to be, and it was mainly for attorneys to make money. I don't want to go into that, but that's kind of like what it was. But so the only thing that has changed in the industry and is going to be in effect starting actually in July, is that the commission being offered to a buyer's agent is no longer going to be displayed in the MLS, which is the multi-listing service, which is where we as realtors see all the houses that are for sale. So that's the only difference that came out from this lawsuit, is that is no longer being disclosed. So the only thing we have to do as buyer's agents now representing a buyer is to pick up the phone and talk to the listing agent and say, hey, how much are you paying me? That's basically what it's going to come down to. But still, that's not going away. It's not like, no sellers are going to be paying for buyer's agency commission. But I'm expecting to have some sellers maybe not wanting to do it anymore. And that's when, yes, the buyers will have to take into account that they might have to pay for a buyer's agency representation. But that can still be negotiated in the offer. And I can tell you that so far, I don't think any listing agent is specifically telling their sellers not to cover the buyer's agency compensation, because it's very hard for a buyer as is with all the closing costs to cover their closing costs and match that commission. But going back to making your offer strong, let's say this property in particular that you're putting an offer on is actually, in fact, the seller is offering to pay buyer's agency compensation. If you want to make your offer more appealing, you can actually say, no, wait a second, I'll pay for my agent's compensation, as a way to give you, the seller, credit. So yes, you're still supposed to pay anyway, but if it was offered and now you can offer to pay it back, that's a way to make your offer more appealing to that seller too. Do you want to chime in too?
Yeah, and these things we're talking about with the transfer tax and the buyer's commission, even the seller's commission, you can pay as much of the commission as you want. These are all ways to make your offer stand out without being subject to an appraisal gap. Coming over asking is great, but if we have this large gap that we have to make up with a dollar amount, it just makes it less advantageous for the seller to accept your offer. But if you're offering to pay the transfer tax, you could pay both sides of the transfer tax. You could pay both sides of the realtor commissions. And those are all dollars that go towards closing and keep your loan amount and your monthly payment lower without having an appraisal gap. So different ways to get creative and come in with a strong offer that stands out. And Nini can tell you from her representation on the seller side that finding these little things in the offer make your offer stand out. And now they're talking about your offer more often than just something else. Well, don't forget, they're paying both sides of the transfer tax. Don't forget they're paying this. So it just keeps you in the conversation and the running of getting your offer accepted that much more.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of buyers of mine come to me and say like, oh, I didn't get this offer accepted and I went 40K over. But that sometimes means nothing if it's not guaranteed to the seller that he's going to get the 40K over. So sometimes they may choose a lower offer because that lower offer is actually guaranteeing funds like transfer tax, appraisal gap, commission from the buyer side, you name it, or, they could be doing anything. So sometimes those guarantees terms, that guarantee cash on the seller's pocket are worth more to the seller than just a promise that, hey, I will pay you 40K over, but I still have an appraisal contingency. So if it doesn't appraise, you don't get it. So that's basically what that means, unless you're putting an offer where you don't have an appraisal contingency. That's a different story. And then I would be cautious on how much you offer, because you could potentially stand to be on an upside down situation, as a buyer. So just keep that in mind. I've had some nightmare stories that happen out there because the agency fully explained to the buyers and they were buying down appraisal contingency and they had to pay out of pocket way more than they were expecting. So be careful with that. And if you're buying as a cash, whatever cash is, it is. So that's also different. But I'm talking about any other type of financing where you do have, a down payment, and you do have to have an appraisal contingency in place because you are putting less than 20%.
You stole it. I was going to say. So a lot of what we're talking about here are relate to buyers that are putting less than 20% down. So when you are putting 20% down or more, say you have a bunch of money down, or we're doing a bridge loan where you get the advance on the equity that you're using, we can try to write an offer that doesn't have an appraisal required, where you're just not checking that box on the offer that there's no appraisal required. So on the lender side, once I start having a buyer who has 20% down or more, once you identify a property, I can put the full property address in, run it through my automated underwriting system, and see if I can generate an appraisal waiver, meaning that we've already accepted the value of the property as is compared to the value of your loan for that specific property. That can help get your offer accepted, because now the seller knows, oh my God, there's not even any appraisal gap contingency because they don't need an appraisal. And we can probably close quicker again too. So that's another option. A lot of these options with appraisal gap and sweeteners and things are for minimum down payment buyers or less than 20%. Once you have 20% down or more, we can look at some of these other solutions to help get your offer accepted and coming in stronger.
Exactly. Spoke beautifully. Thank you. Yes. So without appraisal, things are guaranteed to the seller. So that spices things up a lot. So an offer without appraisal at all, it's a guarantees money to the seller. So that's very strong. Yeah. So I guess, do you want to cover anything else as far as being competitive or anything like that?
No, I think we're pretty good. And obviously everybody's situation is different. I mean, before we had this presentation started, Nini and I were talking about one of the buyers we're working with, and what type of offers and what type of solutions we're going to craft for them. So everybody's situation is different, and you're not going to have to come up with these solutions by yourselves. This is when you're going to lean on our expertise, and we're going to make suggestions to you for possibilities on how to structure a strong offer here. And then you're going to make decisions based on what you're comfortable with.
Exactly. Well, so I'm just going to cover up to kind of give you an idea after your offer is accepted and what happens. We kind of touched base on a few of these things already, but basically, once you send the offer and the seller say, hey, I choose your offer, you are it, congratulations, your offer accepted. There are a few things you need to know to expect. So the first one is that we're going to have the earnest money deposit due. Some buyers don't even think about that. That's basically like your skin in the game. It's not an extra amount of money towards any fee or anything like that. It's basically a portion of your closing costs being given in advance and being held by the seller party. In Pennsylvania, it's not held by the seller. I know some states are different. In Pennsylvania, it's held by the listing brokerage. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here really quick because the EMD actually ties to the previous screen in some of the ways to help get your offer accepted. If you got a beefy deposit with your offer, it just makes you seem that much stronger. If you're making an offer on a $300,000 house and you want your EMD to be $100, you're probably not getting your offer accepted. But when I'm trying to prepare my buyers and educate them, if they're 3% down, make your 3% down your EMD, because you're using that money already budgeted for the house. If they don't accept your offer, you get the EMD back immediately. They don't even cash the check. But if you're a 3% down buyer and your deposit is $9,000, that makes your offer stand out, because now they're like, oh my God, look at their EMD. Sometimes we're seeing 500, 1,000, 5,000. You're a $9,000 EMD. Man, they must really want this house. And again, they're talking about accepting your offer. So just another strategy.
Yes. Thanks for mentioning that. In Pennsylvania, we see like the average EMD is either 1 or 2%. But yes, if you want to show, hey, I'm a strong buyer, I really want this house, I'm not looking to backing out anytime soon, you can make that very strong. Just keep in mind that the earnest money is only protected by whatever contingency you have on your file. So if for some reason you waive the inspection contingency, but then you're like, oh, I found this crack, it doesn't look right, and I want to back out, you're stand to lose your deposit. So the deposit is only lost if you back out of a deal with no contingency or no contractual reason. But if there is a contractual reason or a contingency protecting you, you never lose your deposit. So just keep that in mind. But you can make that as high as you want. There's no, I mean, I say that the common is 1 to 2%, but you can do whatever you want to do for the deposit. It can even be below 1%. But like Jay said, it's not going to look so good if you're buying a $350,000 home and putting $1,000 deposit. So just keep that in mind. But that's usually do within 5 days. The other way to spice it up too, that I did mention on a previous screen, is that you can say, hey, if my offer is accepted, I'll give my deposit within 1 day or 3 days. Mm-hmm. That's another way to do it. The contract standard is 5. That's why I put it in here. Usually do in 5 days, but you can say like, I'll give it to you in 1 business day because I am that committed. So it kind of shows the seller just how strong and how committed of a buyer you are. Within the first few days as well, GJ is going to start your mortgage application, and he's also going to be placing the order for the appraisal if there is one that's going to be in place. A lot of the time, if you're putting less than 20, yes, you're going to have an appraisal. So he's going to take care of that. And he's going to finalize any mortgage details, any documentation that may be pending. That's why having the CCA that he mentioned before, it speeds things up, because a lot of the lenders would then just now start your entire paperwork collection and application. GJ is going to have that done and ready to go. So that kind of, speeds the process. And the quicker you can close, usually is also another way to make your offer, stronger, saying, hey, seller, we can close in less than 30 days. That's another great way to kind of make your offer appeal better to the seller. Inspections, usually we do a 10-day inspection according to the contract, but that's another way to spice it up your offer. You can say, look, I want to keep my contingency on inspection. I'm only going to ask for items that are, higher than whatever amount. But I'm going to do that in 5 days instead of 10. So that's another way to kind of say, hey, seller, I'll get it done quick. That way I'm not holding you up too long in case, something does go wrong and I decide to back out. So that's a way to do that too. The home insurance, that's something I usually try to get you guys connected with, a trusted broker for insurance right away, so you can get a quote, because that's part of GJ's, to-do list. They have to have homeowners insurance quotes in your file before they can clear. And do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah. Someone who's watching this, who's a first-time home buyer, this might be a question that they have. What's the difference between home insurance and mortgage insurance? So home insurance is for the actual property itself, fire, theft, storm damage, things like that. Mortgage insurance is insurance against the buyer default on the payment. So somebody who's putting less than 20% down is going to be required to have some type of mortgage insurance or PMI, whether it's a monthly fee or a one-time fee, and depending upon the loan, that may drop off after a few years or when the value reaches a certain point. But just trying to think as a first-time home buyer, what questions they might offer here. And you might see that you're doing all this homework up front, you're getting creative, you're making the offer, and then you have to put your EMD down, you have to order your inspections, you have to order the appraisal. In the first 10 days after your contract is accepted, it's very hectic with a lot of signing and a lot of things that you have to do. And then after that, you probably don't hear from us for a little while. And that's like no news is good news. That means that we have everything from you that we need. But I just want to set realistic expectations that once you're under contract, you're contractually obligated to these dates. And things move very quickly in the first 10 days, the first 2 weeks. So be prepared. Don't go on vacation right after you make an offer to buy a house. You're going to have work to do.
Yes, please don't do that. And if you do, please stay close to your computer, because you'll be hearing from me and GJ. That is a must. So after basically this first 10 days, like he said, is the first 10 days are critical. Then he kind of dies out for you, the buyer, not for us per se, because we still have a lot to do on our backside. And then there's a lot of the due dates that we have to stay committed to. But basically on your side, you're going to get hectic again a week or so before your settlement date. So before the closing date that we call it. That's, I would say maybe even a little more than that, right? That's when you're going to get a little busier again, because we might be getting the appraisal back, or the underwriters might be sending some final requests back that you might have to send one paperwork from work, a new pay stub or something like that last minute. So that's when you kind of hear from GJ again until we are able to give you, I mentioned this before, the CTC clear to close. And that usually happens within, hopefully even later than that, but I would say like 3 to 5 days. That's when we usually see a CTC coming out. And then once we have that, we can already usually I'll have the schedule already, your settlement the day before or 2 days before the closing day, the settlement day. I will do what's called a final walkthrough. That is very important for different reasons. Of course, you want to make sure that if there were any repairs done to the property by the seller, you can kind of check it out, make sure they were done correctly. And also make sure that, usually that's why I do it before the settlement date, one day, because the sellers are usually out by then, hopefully. And then we can kind of see like if there was any damage, hopefully. Some deals right now is not going through like that, but anyway. So if there was any damage done during the move out, if they actually left the property swept clean, that's what kind of it says on the contract, and the interpretation for that can vary dramatically because there's hygiene of different levels for different people. But the expectation is to be at least clear of any debris, nothing still left over there, no personal items and stuff like that, and no additional damage that were not there prior. And if there is, or anything is no longer working that was before, then we would make notation of that. So the final walkthrough, there is an actual form that we have to fill it out as a buyer's agent and a buyer, basically saying, yes, we accept the house as is, or no, we found these things and we are going to give X amount of days to the seller to correct these issues, or we're going to push settlement back and the seller has 2 days prior closing to take care of those things. So there's different ways we can go about it, but that's basically like the final check before you actually sign the paperwork and take responsibility of that property. So it's your last chance to kind of, make sure that everything is good and in order. And then is your closing day. That's there's different names for it. We say closing day, settlement day, close of escrow, you name it. That's the day you actually going to sign your paperwork. You got to come with your rested wrist because it's going to be a little bit of paperwork. And then you're going to be signing everything and getting your keys. And, hopefully I'll be there to celebrate with you. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
I'll jump
And
in. I want to talk a little bit about the process because it's one of the things that buyers I don't think understand. So the entire time once you're under contract, myself and the mortgage company, we're working on your financing for the loan. Okay. The title company is handling everything related to the property, making sure that you're buying a property that doesn't have any judgments, liens, or encroachments against it, that the sellers were paying off all of their liens that are on it, any surprise liens, things like that. They're getting the property taxes for the home, garbage, sewer, water bill, all those things associated to the home. So we're not really, while we're working on the loan, the title company is working on the property. Then we get our file clear to close. The title company does the same thing with them where they get all of their information. And then right before closing, we meet. So we take our numbers and we match them with the title company's numbers to come up with a matched or a final CD or closing disclosure for you to sign. So we do an excellent job of estimating all those numbers up front in the beginning. And usually 99 times out of 100, my final closing numbers come in slightly lower for the buyer than what we were anticipated. Nobody likes to get hit with $1,000, an extra $2,000 a week before closing. And I try to make sure that never happens. But sometimes there might be like a homeowners association where the house you're buying has an HOA and the sellers paid a full year of HOA dues in advance because it's required for them to be on the board so they could vote. So you might have to reimburse them for that money and we weren't aware of it. That's like a rare situation where we might have to add something in. But the title company is working on all of that. We're working on all the loans. So that's what happens when we meet in the middle and we give you those final numbers before the closing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was great clarification there. That's true. A lot of people don't understand how that works and what their job is on the title company side. One thing too to add to that, a lot of people don't know what to do, like how to pay at the closing day, right? The closing table. So you are not allowed to bring cash. That's not something we handle at the closing table, and no personal checks either. So nowadays, is either a cashier certified check, or you can do a wire. Now, to go over the wire option, one thing that I want to make sure and point it out to all of you out there, the lender will never request you to wire funds prior closing. There's a lot of scams happening right now the buyers are getting emails that look like it's coming from the loan officer and saying, hey, I need you to wire your down payment, and it's before closing. That is never a thing. You never have to wire funds to the lender directly. And you do wire funds to the title company that are for your closing costs. But the other thing to keep in mind is that don't trust emails. If we are sending you the wire instructions, please call it and confirm it directly to the person that you have been already talking to, because emails get hacked all the time. It's very unfortunate. This is an industry where we're dealing with a lot of money, and you got to be super careful, but it does get hacked. And it's too easy to hack into, not just hack into someone's email, but sometimes they can clone it, right? And then send you false information. So don't trust emails whatsoever. If you receive something that looks official, but you're not sure, still call it. Right? Still call it to confirm, but just know that no funds will ever be wired directly to a lender prior closing. Because I've seen that happen with myself personally. Actually, 3 buyers of mine received an email that looked like it came from the loan officer that I was working with. And you could see that was not right because it wasn't even the right address or nothing. But they were like, why do I have to wire my funds? One of them was about to. And I'm like, no. Oh my gosh. So yes, just know. I always call to confirm no matter what, but there's never going to be wired directly to a lender. And you can add anything there.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother class. Once again, the title of this seminar is How to Thrive in This Market. And I think if you've taken anything away is you need to have a good, experienced team working on your behalf. We all have a ton of expertise and are here to help. And if we can prevent you from falling prey to someone trying to scam you out of some money, we will. So listen to us, take our advice, and we'll help make the process as smooth as possible.
Yes, that's right. We'll be right there with you, holding your hand every step of the way, for sure. I did want to cover one question that we missed, and it was in regards of the rehab loan. They were saying, can you have a rehab loan even if you already have a pre-approval with your bank? I'll let you answer that.
It depends what type of pre-approval you have, because the rehab loan is a different type of loan. Usually the interest rate is slightly higher because it's a little bit more risk associated with that. So it's not like it's 2 different loans. So it's not like you can get your pre-approval with your bank and then get a separate $20,000 loan for the rehab. It's one separate renovation loan. It stands independent. So they may have to alter their existing approval to set it up as a renovation loan. So it's not like they're lending you, $200,000 to buy the house and $20,000 for repairs. That's not what it works. And the one thing that I have to make people aware for the renovation loan is the buyer or a family member is not allowed to do the work. It has to be a certified licensed contractor.
Yes. And that contractor has to be chosen and be within the file prior and approved by the lender prior to even closing. And then that contractor needs to be the same one you're going to be using for the renovation. So everything is actually finalized and there's contracts put in place for a specific quote amount that you chose. And then it has to be a fixed quote. That contractor cannot be changing numbers or adding things later on. It has to be fixed. Of course, there's always a little contingency. I think they usually put about 15%, right? Yeah. So there's a little contingency, but it has to be a fixed quote. And it has to be that specific contract because it's licensed, each driver's license is all in file for many different reasons, if you want to get into that too. But the bank just want to make sure that you're using someone that is licensed and able, to do the work correctly in Pennsylvania. So hopefully that answers the question. Good. Okay, perfect. So after you close, how soon can you go move in? So that's an easy one, right away. So as soon as you sign the paperwork and get your key, the house is yours. It's funny. That's a very common question that I get from a lot of buyers. Like, when do I move in? And that's right after settlement. So basically, as soon as you sign all the paperwork, the house is technically yours and you're the new homeowner. On the 3 days prior or even a week prior, we'll help you set up your utilities to make sure that everything is in your name prior to that date. But as soon as you sign the paperwork, move in.
You probably want to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy new locks with new
For
keys as well.
sure. Yes, please don't trust the previous owners. They can be the sweetest person in the world, but you never know how many copies they made, where they forgot those keys, who they gave copies of the keys to. You just don't trust, right? This is not necessarily the world. It's the world that we live in. We can't really trust people, unfortunately. So just make sure you change your locks as soon as you move in. Maybe that day right away, I would say. Nice one, GJ. That's for sure an important one. So we're gonna leave here with our information of today. GJ and I are very excited to answer any questions. So if anybody else, maybe something we didn't cover today, or maybe some question, some specific question that you may have, feel free to reach out to us. Our information is going down the bottom as well. I don't know if make it easier or not, but go ahead.
Yeah, reach out to us. I have a lot more information that we didn't get to cover about all the different down payment assistance programs and things we have. The other thing we have right now, and is usually a question that we get in person, is what if I need the equity in my house to buy the next house? Having a sales contingency, I heard, could stop my offer from getting accepted. Well, we have a program that will allow you to make your offer and advance you those funds without having a sales contingency as part of your offer. So you get access to all the equity in your home. You get a guaranteed purchase price for your home, or 120 days to sell it on your own. So another way for someone who has maybe a ton of equity and wants to buy, but knows if I have to sell and have to buy, I'm going to be crunched on a timeline. It's going to be so stressful doing both at the same time. We give you 120 days to sell the house. So that's another thing that we could do a whole nother class on.
I know. Maybe that should be our next one.
We keep saying that.
I know. We have lots of topics. We should be writing it down, everything. But yeah, that's very important too that you mentioned the buy now, sell later option, because a lot of people are very scared in this market. It's tough to be a buyer, right? So you're competing, you're not sure that you're going to be able to get an offer accepted. And then your house most likely will sell much faster than you can find a home.
And then what do you got to do? Put your stuff in storage until you close on the next one and hope that everything goes through on the same day. You're selling yours, you're buying the next one. You got the moving trucks lined up. No, it'd be a lot more easier to just find the house, because finding the house and buying is the harder time-consuming process. Your house pretty much is going to sell like that. So find a house, buy the house, and then sell yours, get the money up front. It's a great program.
I know. Yeah, we should definitely do an episode to talk about that for sure, because I feel like that's a very common one now, especially with the short of inventory. A lot of people are scared of selling because of that situation alone, because they're afraid they're not going to be able to find something, and then the house sell too fast. And there's also ways for us to do the traditional sale that we call it, where we make your sale contingent on your purchase and your purchase contingent on your sale. But everything has to kind of fall in place and match up perfectly. So that's why this type of programs are very, very, very helpful, because it allows you to just focus on finding a property first, and then we worry about selling your house, which we know in today's market, as soon as we list it on the right price, it's going to sell. So
yeah, and one last thing, if you're interested in starting the process, there's no application fee or anything like that. We don't charge any money up front. If you're worried about getting your credit pull, we can do a soft pull initially. And if you need work on your credit, I can run a report that show you some things to do. We didn't get to talk about credit or credit scores that much either. I know there's usually a lot of questions about those as well. So feel free to reach out.
And we did get one more question here. Is the offer the same for a multifamily home?
Well, the offer can be whatever you want the offer to be. The good thing about buying a multifamily home is, for the qualifying purposes, we can sometimes use a portion of that rent money to help you qualify to buy that one. And the offer, if it's going to be multifamily, if it's going to be a primary residence where you're living in one and renting the other, then pretty much everything we talked about today applies. If you're buying it straight up as a second home or an investment property, you're going to have to do a little bit more money down. The minimum down payments do not apply, because a few years ago, because of this supply shortage on houses, they made it less advantageous for investors to keep gobbling up all these houses. They want them available for people to buy as primary residences. So it's more advantageous to buy it as a primary, less advantageous to buy it as an investment property. But if the cash flow works, we can still get it done for you and be profitable.
Yeah, when it comes to offering, it's really the same exact process. There may be some changes on the qualification because, like he said, you may be able to use that potential income from the secondary property within the multifamily as part of your income. But the actual offering process is the exact same. Everything applies, the appraisal gap, all that stuff, it's all the same. But there is a really good opportunity there, especially for younger fellas out there that are looking to build their portfolio, getting started in the real estate market. It's a very good way to get into their rental business by buying your primary residency that is like a 1 up to 4 units, 1 to 4 units. That's considered residential. So you can get multifamily, leaving one, rent the others, living there for a year. Then you can rent the one you're in, buy the next one, maybe use the equity of the first one to do the down payment on the second property that you can get, and keep going like that. Especially when you're young, that's easy to do. That's a really good way to get started investing in real estate without having to invest 20% down, taking advantage of the low down payments.
Yeah, before we wrap up, I have a really good story about someone who's getting ready to close on one of those 2 units right now, where the 1 unit is a salon. They're going to be a salon owner on the first floor. They live on the second floor, and next door is a 2-bedroom that they rent. So they have rent money coming in from next door. They have their office right there on the first floor for their salon, and they're living upstairs. So those are good things we can do.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So yeah, so you take advantage of that, because when you're leaving one, you benefit from everything as a primary residency, as a buyer. Whenever you don't, then things change a little bit. You got to have more money down. So take advantage of it. If you are able to do that kind of scenario, do it now, and take advantage of the possibility of increasing portfolio for cheaper. And I think that's it. I don't see any more questions coming in. So GJ, I always love doing this with you. So I'm ready for the next one already. And hopefully a lot of people learned a lot today.
Yeah, you want to give a little overview of what we're going to be doing next month? Instead of first-time home buyers, we're going to be targeting some realtors and how to help them.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about, the kind of the flip of the coin, how to thrive as a realtor in this market. So we're going to be talking about strategies, creative ways that you can provide to your clients so you can get more business. And that's going to be coming on July 25th. So more information to come. I'll be posting, Jade will be posting, and we're happy to be bringing also a guest speaker that's going to be talking a little bit on the financing side of things for realtors. And so yeah, I'm excited. We're going to be talking about some strategies and creative ways to thrive here as a realtor as well.
Yeah, awesome. Can't wait.
Yes. See you then. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.